that we'll do our wedding sponsors. Ella and David Adler in memory of her father Eliel ben Yosef Cohen. Those who were inspired by Rebbetzin Emeritus Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Stamalkabad, Mishum Yisachar. Gail and Leslie Kaplan in memory of their parents, Mushka Sprinzer Bad Yosef Chaim Batava, Kanan ben Moshe Eliezer Bachana, Pesha Bat Shmuel Yitzchak Alevi Betzipora, Yisra ben Yom Moshe Cohen Bachan. Wexford Friends of Gladys Schwimmen, Gutta Bad Meir, Michael Klein and Friends of Judah Klein, Yehudi Tzvi ben Chaim, Marsha Bronner in memory of her husband Rabbi Rachmel ben Shmuel, Friends and family of Arthur Ridholtz, Mordechai Yil ben Baruch Leib HaKohen, friends and family of Sigi Bessler, Shalom Shraga ben Dov, friends of Marvin Weinstein, Mordechai Ozer ben Yisrael Aron, Sarah Alper in memory of her husband, Harav Tzvi Lipa ben Hillel, Wexford Friends of Maddie Friedman, Mendel Miriam Bat Talman Ruben, A Month of Learning by Susan and Ruben Podolsky, in memory of Simcha Bunam, her father, Simcha Bunam ben Yeshua, A Week of Learning by Leila Bester, in memory of her mother-in-law, Rachel Bat Shalom, Rabbi Tzvi and Robin Karpel, in memory of his mother, Malka Bat Mordechai, and her mother, Chaya Edel Bat Menachem Zev. Okay? Today is the 2nd of May. Okay, we do not have any individual days of learning for today. Hashem is having a liya, crying for the fear of the Yeshir, Hashem is going to open his fair paper bench. Yeah, that's right. Okay. We left off on the top of Samech Dalet Amud Aleph. Okay? I'm just going to go back a tiny bit. Okay? Okay, to the very bottom of Samech Gimel Amud Beis, the 2 dots, real quick, just to give us a review and I think help us move along. The Amar Rav Nachman says, Rav Nachman, Haiman, the Ozif, Shite Mechad, right? And regarding one who borrowed small change from his friend and neighbor, right? That's what happened. Vishkach Be to Faina. To Faida, okay? Okay, he had an excess, right? If it's possible within a, let's call it reasonable doubt, that the one can be aware of that, right? Things like that, right? What happens is the Gemara, he's obligated to return it to him. And if not, Matana Ba'almahu, it's a gift, the Hivle that he gave him. Okay? Hechidami, B'chtei Shadat Toeh, asks the Gemara, how do we know if it's within a reasonable doubt? Okay, the example I gave yesterday, I asked Avrami for 25 cents to be able to put in the tzedakah, and he pulls out of his pocket some change, and I look, and it's 3 dimes and 1/4 instead of 2 dimes and 1/4. Okay, that's the example I gave yesterday. Okay, all right. So, given the reason I chose that is particular, because you'll see in a moment. Amar Rav Acha Bered the Rav Yosef, he says, why the Isuraita ubechamishutaya? Because they counted their money in 5s and 10s. So the example of the dime is why I chose that. Okay? Okay, so that's where we left off. And now we pick up on Samech Dalet Amud Aleph. Okay, 64a, I assume 1. Amarle Rav Acha Bered the Rav Ashi. He says to him, V'inish takifahu. What happens if the person is, we might say hard, but what we mean is not generous, right? Okay? Right? Delo yahiv matana, that he doesn't usually give out gifts. Okay? My, what's the situation then? Amarle, he says to him, Dilma migzal gazli. Well, says the Gemara, I would call this dan lechaf zechut. Okay, in this piece of Gemara here. Okay? Well, maybe the fellow, he had stolen money from this guy. Va'avlale b'cheshbon. And he included it in the amount when he paid back the money. Okay, Titania, excuse me, as we learned in a Braita, Hagozel et Chavero, one who steals from his neighbor, Ve'ivlialo v'cheshbon, and he includes it. Okay, notice, by the way, Hivliya usually means swallows it up, almost like he hides it, but he includes it. Okay, in the amount, Yatsa has fulfilled his obligation. Okay,
If one can return
Go ahead.
stolen goods
without the
knowing about it,
right, yes, uh-huh. We had that before. Ve'inish da'ate ma'alma, says the Gemara. What if it's a stam, somebody from the outside? You haven't done business with this person before. Okay, right? Delo shakil v'tari bahade. Okay, that again, he's never done a deal with him. My, what's the situation there? Marle, he said to him, Dilma inish achrina gazla. Maybe he stole it from somebody else. Va'amarle, and he says to him, Ki yazi floni pshite mina. When it comes that so and so will borrow money from you, avla le b'cheshbon, I will put it inside the amount of money, okay, in that situation. Amarav Kahana, as we get to a new piece. Havi yativna b'shilhe parke de Rav. Rav Kahana tells us, I was once sitting at the far end of Rav's house. Bob, you have your sefer? Is the next one right here? Okay. Usually we have one or two extra. Okay. So what happened? And I was sitting at the far end of Rav's house, right? Right, and the Shia we'll get to that in a second, right? And apparently there was a Shia going on, and he says, Vishamita kamar kari kari. And I kept hearing they were using the word gourds, right? Velo yadana mai kamar. And I don't know what was being said. But hard to come Rav, and after Rav got up, okay, and perhaps left the room, Amre Laho, he said to the those in the shiur, right? My kare to kamar Rav. What was this business of gourds and gourds that Rav was talking about? Amruli, they said to me, Hachi kamar Rav. This is what Rav told us and said. Hai man diahiv zuze lagina. There was somebody who gave money to his gardener. Akre, okay, and he told him the following: V'ka azle asarakare. Okay, and he told him basically that I want you to go out and purchase some gourds for me, right? And how many? He should purchase 10 gourds, right? B'nei zarcha, right? And right, and basically, okay, how much was what was the size of the gourds? B'nei zarta. They were about from one's tip of one's thumb to the end of the pinky. Okay, a hand breadth. Let's call it that. All right, about half an amma, according to some sources. Okay, va'amar le yehivna lach b'nei garmiya. So he goes to the local supermarket or to the food stand, wherever, right? And the farmer then tells him, basically, tells him what? That he's willing to give him, if wants to pay him in advance, he'll give him those that are much larger. Okay, more like a cubit. Okay, So that's what he tells him. Itnihu shari, if he has them, that's permitted. Okay? Velitnahu, if he doesn't have it, asur, then that's forbidden. Okay? Pshita. Isn't that obvious, says the Gemara? Mahu detema, what's it trying to tell us or teach us? Kivan de memele tarabu, since on their own, I'm going to translate memele here, that's going to grow. Shapir dami, then this situation is acceptable. Okay? Kamashmalan, but it still comes to teach us that it's still a possible example of interest. Okay? Keman, according to whom? Kihai Tana, according to the following Tana, the Tanya, as taught elsewhere in a Braita, Ha'olech lechalov et izav, one who went to milk his goats, ulexos et rechalav, or to shear his sheep, uleradot et kavarato, or to extract honey from his beehive, right? Matsu chavero va'amalo. If he finds his neighbor and he says to him, Masha izi chovot, what my goats, let's say, deliver in milk at this time, mecholach, I'll sell to you. Right? Masha rechli guzozot, what my sheep uh, give off in their shearings at this time, mecholach, okay, I'll sell to you. Ma shekavarati rodeh, that which I can derive now. And notice I'm putting the emphasis on that time. Okay? All right? Rodeh macholach, I'll sell to you. Mutar, on all those cases, that is permitted. Okay? Aval, says the Gemara going on. But imamarlo, if he says to the person seeking to buy those items, okay? Masha izi chovot kach v'kach. When my goat gives forth milk in the future, macholach, I'll sell to you, or is sold to you. Masha rechalei gozazot kach v'kach mecholach. Or when my sheep shear it, and has its shearings, will be sold to you in the future time. Masha kavarati rodeh kach v'kach mecholach. Or when the honey is extracted from the beehive in the all along future time is sold to you, asur, that is forbidden. Okay, the afalgav de mimele karabu, even though it would seem that these items naturally are increasing on their own, kevan delitnehu bahahusha, since he does not have it on hand. I'm going to read into the Gemara for the moment. Okay, at that time, right? Asur, it is forbidden. Ikada'amu. And there are those who explain it in the following manner. Amar Rava, this is Rava, Kevan de mimele karava, since it grows on its own and increases in size, shapir dami, that's well taken and accepted. Vahatanya, but aren't we taught elsewhere in a Braita, kach v'kach asur, that if he doesn't have it on the moment, okay, but has to wait, okay, that's forbidden. Hatam lav mine karabu, but there in those other situations, namely the milk, the shearing, the honey, okay, it's not produced, okay, it doesn't come from the original item. It doesn't come from itself, okay? Whereas our earlier example, the gourds, they naturally grow by themselves, okay? The bees have to come back and produce more honey. The shearings, the wool of the sheep, after it's shorn, it has to produce more wool. So on, the same thing with the goat. Okay, it's milked. That milk is done. It has to produce more milk. Okay, so that's the shakle leilahai, right? Because the milk and the wool, etc., they are new milk or new wool, right? And not an extension of the earlier items available at the time of sale. That's different. The gourd doesn't grow back. Okay, but that gourd doesn't grow back. Okay, all right? Right? So what happens? Va'ate achrina beduchte. And another one is going to come back in its place. Those other things, right? Hacha mine karavu. But here, in the example of the gourd, Shraga 5 see, the chishak de lahai, because when he takes that particular one, lo ate acharina beduchte. Another one doesn't come back in its place. Okay? Etrog, by the way, is the same thing. An etrog, by the way, is the same thing. Once you pluck the etrog, another one does not grow in that same location. Okay? Amar Rabbi, okay, that's why at the end of the season, kibbutz, dati kibbutz, where they might grow etrogim, okay, they actually have people cut off whatever etrogim they don't sell, okay, because otherwise nothing is going to grow. Okay? Amar Abai, Shari le inish lememar la lechavi. It's permissible for someone to say the following to his friend: Helech arba zuze achbiyete dechamre. Okay, so to speak, I'm going to give you 4 zuz, and I want you to purchase a keg of wine for me. In other words, you're giving him the money in advance to purchase the item. E takfa, okay? And he's saying, if it sours, b'shutcha, that's your responsibility. Okay? Okay? E yikra izila, if the value of that keg of wine, okay, increases or decreases, b'shuti, that's up to me. Okay? So it's a my gain or my loss. Right, the one who gave him the money. So since he's taking that responsibility, okay, that's acceptable. Amarle Rav Shravya la Abai, and Rav Shravya says to Abai as follows. Let's go over. Okay, Hi Karov Barachok lehefsedu. Okay, that this one may be near closer to profit. Okay, okay, for his item and further away from a loss. Amarle, he responded, Kevan de Mekabel Zula. Since he's willing also to accept the loss, Karov Lazehu Lazehu. It is both close enough to this one or to that one. Either way, okay? When he gave him the money, that may have been the market price at the time. Okay? Okay?
It's not the seller's fault that the wine spoils. They got paper that says.
But that's the point. Okay, he's got to stipulate what the basis of his giving the money for the purchase is. Okay? All right, we got a new Mishnah. Okay? So what happens in this Mishnah? We're going to see. Hamava et kavero. Okay? He lends money to another. Lo yidur b'chatzero. He can't live in his courtyard. Chinam, for nothing. Okay? Second, v'lo yiskor mimenu pachot mipnei shahu ribit. Nor can he sort of receive a discount on the rent, so to speak, if I can use that language. Why? Because this also is considered a kind of interest. Right? Okay? So, let's go on. Amar Rav Yosef Bar Minyome, Amar Rav Nachman. In the name of Rav Nachman. Afal Pisha Amru, Hadar Bechatzah. one who lives within a courtyard, chavero of his neighbor, shelo mida'ato, without the neighbor's, in other words, he's a squatter in that neighbor's courtyard. Okay? Eino tzarich lahalot lo sechar. He doesn't have to pay any rent. Hilvuhu v'dar. If he loaned him money and he's living there, b'chatzero, in the courtyard, tzrich lahalot lo sechar. He then must pay him rent. My kamashmalan. What is it trying to come to teach us? Tanina, we've learned the following already previously in an earlier bright. Hamalvet et chavero lo yadur b'chatzero chinam. That was our Mishnah, right? That one who was living in the courtyard, okay, I'm sorry, one who loaned money to another, and right, cannot live in that person's courtyard for free. V'lo yiskar mimenu papachot mipnei shehu ribit, or cannot get a discount on the rent, okay, for less than the going value because it's interest. Imi matniti. If we're saying we've learned it from our Mishnah, Hava Amina, Hanimili, Bechatzer de Kaimala Andra, then I'm saying, or I believe, that what we're dealing with is a situation where that courtyard is available for rent. There's some place to be able to rent it. The Gavra da Avi the Megan. And the person, okay, is looking to rent it. Okay? Aval Chatzer. Delo Kaimala Agra. But in a situation where there is no place to rent in that courtyard.
The owner doesn't rent it out.
That's what we're going to get to. The Gavra Delo Avi the Megan. And the owner is not prepared, I'm just going to say it that way, to rent out any space in the courtyard. Amelo, I would say no. Kamash Malan comes to teach us that's not the case. Ikita Amre. And therefore there are those who tell it in the following manner. Amar Rav Yosef Bar Minyome. Says Rav Yosef Bar Minyome Amar Rav Nachman, in the name of Rav Nachman. Afa Pisha Amru. Even though it's been said, Hadar b'chatzar chavero shalom mida'at, that one who's living, as we said, okay, in the courtyard of his neighbor without the owner of the courtyard's awareness, okay, eino tzarich la'alot lo sechar, that we say he does not have to pay rent. But if it said halveni v'dor b'chatzeri, okay, but if the owner of the courtyard happens to say to this individual, can you loan me some money and I will let you stay in my courtyard, right? Sarich la'alot lo sachar. Then we say he must be paying him, the owner, rent, right? Man amar hilvahu. When we say that they've rented kol shekain halveni, all the more so when the person asks to be paid, to asks for a loan. Uman da amar halveni aval hilvahu lo. But one who's asked to loan him something, but they've already loaned it, right? No. My tama, what's the reasoning? Kevan de meikara lav ada'ata dahachi usfe. Since originally we're saying that he was dwelling there without the knowledge of the owner, right? Dahachi usfe. And then comes the situation that he's loaning him money. Lead lanba, we say there is nothing there. Okay? Now, what happens? Rav Yosef Bar Chama, Takif Avdei de Insha. We get a new story. Okay, I found this particular piece was sometimes it tells you you need to learn from your son or son-in-law certain things. Okay? Rav Yosef Bar Chama, Takif Avdei de Inshe de Masik Bahozuza. Rav Yosef Bar Chama, who happened to be the father of Rava, okay, had the practice if people owed him money, he would seize their workers and make them work for him. Okay? So that's what the Gemara is telling us. Right? Va'avid baho avidite. And they would do work for him. Amarle Rava Bere, says Rava his son. Ma'itama avid marhaki. What's the reason that the master, okay, does that? Amarle, his father answers, Ana Karav Nachman Saviran. I hold like Rav Nachman, the Amar Rav Nachman, who has said as follows, Avda Nachum Krise Lo Shave. Basically, the servant is not getting his belly full. In other words, there's no loss on the part of the actual owner of that servant. He doesn't have to pay him, okay? Doesn't have to pay food for him. So he's not losing anything if I seize his worker and make him work for me. Okay? Let's see. So Rava doesn't take that from his father too easily. Let's see. Amarle. But he said to him, a more, I'll say as follows. The Amar Rav Nachman. Okay? Says right. Also Rav Nachman says, Kigon da Ari Avde. Okay? De Markid Be Kube. But maybe it's similar to the example of Ari, who's in other words, his father's, I assume, his father's worker. De Markid Be Kube, that he what's called dances in taverns. In other words, he performs in taverns. Okay? Avde Achrine Miyama. Who's to say that other workers are like that? Namely, that they have an outside means of getting income by which they could take care of their food needs. Okay? And it didn't have to necessarily come from their original owner. Okay? Amarle, so the father responds, Ana ki hada Rav Daniel bar Rav Katina, Amar Rav Svirale. I hold again like Rav Daniel, ben the son of Rav Katina, who says in the name of Rav, who holds as follows, the Amar who says, Hatokef Avdo al Chavero, one who seizes the servant of his neighbor, va'asabo malacha, and makes that servant work, patur is exempt. Why? Let's roll over a little bit. Okay. Denechale de lo nistare avde. Why? So that we can say that way the servant doesn't get idle. In other words, he doesn't become lazy. Okay, I'm going to continue a little bit. Amarle, let's just to finish the story, right? So Rava responds back, Hani mili hecha de lo masik bezuse. That's where the situation is, where he doesn't owe money. Mar kevan de masik boho zuze machze karibi. But the master, namely dad, he's telling him, okay, the fact that you seize these people and make them work for you, and therefore, and the person owed the money, okay, you're getting, I'm going to use the word additional benefit, really, okay, even if you claim that's paying off what he owes you, it appears like ribis. Damar Rav Yosef. It says Rav Yosef bar Menyume Amar Rav Nachman. Afal pish amru hadar b'chatzer chavero shalom mida'ato. Even though they say, or they, that one who lives in the courtyard of his neighbor without an owner's knowledge, eno tzarich la'alot lo sachar, doesn't have to pay him any rent. Okay, hiluhu v'hadar b'chatzero. Right, Hilvu, if he loaned him and he lives in the courtyard, he must therefore pay him some rent. Amarle, he said to him, his father, Padre Bay. Okay, I will take it back. In other words, I won't do it anymore. And that's where we'll stop for today. That's why I say sometimes you do have to listen to the advice of a son or a son-in-law. Okay. All right. And we'll stop right
Okay,
there.
so I'm gonna go with my. Okay?
Yeah. Uh, yeah. Oh, you're gonna wait and you're gonna. Fine.